Old powers waken, shadows stir. An age of wonder and terror will soon be upon us. An age for gods and heroes.
The glass candles are burning, and you're listening to the Obsidian Nights Podcast. Hello, my sweet summer children. Welcome back to the Obsidian Nights Podcast, where we go through books chapter by chapter. Today's special guest is sweet summer family member Rouge. What's up, Rouge? Would you like to let the people know who you are and where they can find you?
Hey guys, my name is Rouge. You can find me on Twitter at rentware, and that's about it.
You're just a big A Song of Ice and Fire fan, right?
Yeah, I love a Song of Ice and Fire. I was so happy when I found your channel because
thank you.
It was just like people were just talking a lot, but you jumped like right into it, and I agree with almost everything you said.
Thank you so much. So today we will be covering Jon 3. So Jon Snow and Tyrion have made it to the wall, and this is our first real look at the interworkings of the Night's Watch and the Wall. One thing I like about Jon's chapters is that he's so far removed from the Southern politics. Like, he's on a very different path up in the north at like the edge of the world. And I like that about Jon's chapters. Like, when you get all of this stuff with Cersei and Arya and Sansa and Ned all in the south, and then you get taken right back up to the north, you kind of like the prologue is in the back of your head, kind of like that. Oh, that's where those white things, those White Walker things were. So that's always in the back of my mind when I read a Jon chapter. But what is it that like, what were your initial thoughts on Jon 3?
Jon 3, as a whole, this is one of my favorite chapters of Jon. I felt like this chapter had almost everything. It had comedy. It had these situations that you can even apply to real life, and it kind of put the plot points that that Jon's future will be. Something else I actually like is that it kind of shows you Jon's point of view and how it doesn't really match up with reality.
Yes, I say that, like, with all of the Stark kids, right? They all have like this messed up view on reality. And I think Arya probably is the one that like Sansa has these songs and Bran has these stories, and Jon Snow thought the Night's Watch was going to be something different than it actually was. And then like Arya's just kind of over there living. Like, she doesn't have any expectations of anything. She's just kind of
right. And something else that kind of comes up, I know you mentioned it a lot, but you also kind of see of like that Stark arrogance that, they kind of think they're better than everyone.
Yes. Yeah, because that's what Jon thinks. I mean, Jon is better than the people that he's fighting against, but also Jon's been raised in a castle. He's been trained by a master at arms. So like, you should be. But yeah,
I agree.
That entitlement kind of thing. I totally get it. I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah, kind of like he lords over everyone with privilege.
Yes, that's what he does. But he gets checked, which is good. Like, he gets checked in this chapter. Alliser Thorne, we're going to talk about Sir Alliser Thorne because he's a pain in the ass. He starts mocking Jon Snow, like calling him Lord Snow. And it's like it's a shot directly at, like, I know Alliser Thorne isn't a good person, but calling him Lord Snow is like kind of highlights even further like that entitlement that Jon Snow has, like, oh, I'm the son of Ned Stark and I'm coming here to win glory and be gallant, and you guys aren't as good with as a sword. You guys aren't as good with a sword as I am. And he does.
Yeah. Also, when he calls him that, I feel that it's also a shot at Jon because just Lord Snow. It's pretty much a combination of what he believes he'll never be and what he is, which is kind of lowers him in society as a whole.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, because he does want to be a lord, and Jon has like this dream of being Lord of Winterfell. Like he's always wanted to be that, and like fast forward all the way to Dance of Dragons, Stannis offers him that, and he declines it. But it's total mockery, and it's total like foreshadowing. Like you'll never be a lord, but you are a bastard. You are a Snow. Remember that.
It's pretty much him just being Thorne, just being petty.
Seriously petty Betty. Alliser Thorne is an interesting character though. Like he's not just mean to Jon, like he's mean to everyone.
Yeah, like he's so miserable.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be there. The only reason he's there is because he was loyal to House Targaryen during the war, and he took the black.
Mm-hmm.
So
something that always interests me about Thorne is that he doesn't want to be there. Jon doesn't want to be there. So I always wonder, is he kind of like a reflection to Jon, how Jon could have been if he was just miserable all the time?
Like if he never found a purpose.
Like he never found a purpose in the Night's Watch. I feel like Jon could have easily, just been like a mean asshole. Like he's already, he acts like he's better than everyone.
Yeah.
Thorne kind of thinks the same way. And I mean, all Jon needs is like to just be so miserable. I can see him acting like Thorne.
Well, I guess over the years, luckily for Jon, like he becomes Lord Commander and he gets to go on rangings with the wildlings and all of this interesting stuff. And the like when I look at the relationship between Jon Snow and Alliser Thorne, knowing that R plus L equals J, I'm like, okay, so you are a Targaryen loyalist and this is a Targaryen and you're treating him like shit. Is like his family is the reason, you supporting his family is the reason you're at this wall.
Irony.
Right. Do you think he would have been any different had he known Jon was a Targaryen or suspected?
Honestly, I probably think he would have hated him even more. Like it would have been more personal.
Yes, I agree. I agree 100%.
Like as now, he doesn't have like a truly concrete reason. Of course, I'm sure he blames, Robert and, Ned. But yeah. It's like, if he knew Jon was a Targaryen, it's like, okay, I served your family. My family served your family for years. And look what my loyalty has gotten you. Well, gotten me.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he'd dislike him even more. Speaking of dislike, Jon really dislikes Castle Black and the Night's Watch and all of it. I want to read this quote. No one had told him the Night's Watch would be like this. No one except Tyrion Lannister. The dwarf had given him the truth on the road north, but by then it had been too late. Jon wondered if his father had known what the wall would be like. He must have, he thought. That only made it hurt the worse. So Jon is dealing with a lot of shit. Like he's arguably at one of the most uncomfortable places in Westeros, at the edge of the world. Like he's found out that he's been lied to his whole life about what the Night's Watch actually is. Like Ned didn't even tell him, basically where he was going, and or just tell him the truth of the place that he's committed to for the rest of his life. And then also you have Benjen up there being all cold to him and distant and not really like not even acting like his uncle.
Yeah, that part I understood it because it actually amused me. It reminded me because, in this chapter, Jon was trying, be a ranger without actually being named a ranger.
Mm-hmm.
And he thought, oh, Benjen's my uncle, I can do that. It reminded me of when you start at like a new school and you have an older sibling and you think you can hang out with their friends.
Yes.
That's what I kind of saw with, Jon trying to, oh, let me sit with my Uncle Benjen during meals and, act like I'm a ranger because I can fight already. It was just funny to me.
Yeah, that is fun. It is a good analogy, though. So, Benjen basically is like, Jon, you're like a green boy. Like, you don't know what the hell you're doing here. You don't, like, whatever you get on the wall, you earn. And I kind of get where Benjen is coming from, but at the same time, like, that is your nephew, like that is your blood. And I think at this time when this chapter was written, George was still probably on his original outline, which Catelyn and Arya were supposed to run to the wall to seek refuge with Jon, and Jon kind of doesn't like want to get involved in that because of his oath to the Night's Watch. And I think like Benjen was kind of foreshadowing for that, but then he changed his mind on what he was doing.
Yeah, I can see that. That makes a lot of sense. And I agree with you said, like, I can see why Benjen's being a little cold. But you know what? I do see his point of view because I think he doesn't want Jon to depend on him too much. Because at the end of the day, you're going to have to kill the boy and become a man.
Yes.
So he wants him to try and find his own way. But on the other hand, I'm not too surprised he acts like that because, as we know, Starks are terrible at conveying things.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I'm glad that even though Jon was treated like that he didn't turn around and treat other people like that. You know what I mean? Like he helped Sam. He made friends instead of just being like, I'm just here to do my bid and be done with it. Kind of like the hard men that he's meeting and interacting with, like Donald Noy and Sir Alliser Thorne and even Benjen, like Benjen's coldness to him, like that doesn't change who Jon is as a person and he doesn't try to follow that. And I like that.
I do too. It shows a lot about his character and the type of person he is and pretty much how you think he can be in the future. I feel like he has the potential to be a very great man.
Yeah, he does. And he is gonna be, like, spoilers when you get into like a Storm of Swords and I mean even a Clash of Kings, all of Jon's arc is like this hero's journey. Like
he's like a typical protagonist in a story, but in a darker setting.
Like he's a Frodo of the Lord of the Rings. He's like a Frodo character, hero journey, tropey, but it's not really like the trope is good with Jon because it's so unexpected with how his story begins. Like he's so far away from everything that's going on, and then it's all gonna land right in his lap. And I really, besides Daenerys, I can't think of anyone better for the job.
I agree.
I can't.
And it really works in his story because the way George does it, it's like it's seen as like very human. I'm like, like a lot of hero stories, they come off as a little too perfect.
Yes.
Like neither Jon or Dany come off as too perfect. They make mistakes and they learn from them.
Yeah, that's the thing about A Song of Ice and Fire is it's so realistic, and like you said, George does a lot to humanize his characters. From the Jaime Lannisters to the Cerseis, Jon, Daenerys, all of them, there's a lot that feels very real about them, and a lot of people relate to these characters so much because they have parts of something that you might have in you. You know what I mean? Like with some kind of characteristic that you have of yourself, you might see in this person, even though it's a fantasy story in a fantasy setting, it feels like they could be real people.
You're right. And even the situations, it feel like, if you take away the fantasy, you can kind of apply them to real life. For example, like John's being mean to like the other recruits. And while they are terrible people, he has to work with these guys and he's going to be living with them for, as far as he knows it, the rest of his life. So it's probably not a good idea to antagonize them and be a jerk. And you can apply that to real life. Like at work, you don't want to be a jerk to your coworkers.
Right. Of course, like these are people that you have to interact with every day. Cause I've had situations where I've wanted to say some shit to my coworkers and I'm like, I have to come to work here tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that. So I might as well just not say anything because it's going to get awkward. Bad. Right. This is going to be uncomfortable from here on out. So Toad called Jon's mother a whore and Jon's like, Lord Eddard Stark was not a man to sleep with whores. And Donald Noy's like, well, okay, young fella, but it didn't stop him from having a bastard. So basically he slept with somebody that wasn't his wife. And Jon is like, my mother, not my mother. Like when they're telling Jon like his mother could be a whore, he's like, not my mother. Like he knows that his mother is not a whore.
Yeah, and he describes her like, I've seen her in my dreams.
Yes.
Beautiful, high-born with kind eyes.
Yes, Lyanna Stark. So it's foreshadowing that Jon's likely there's something going on. It's nothing concrete enough to say, this is a clue for this, but it's definitely a hint at something going on with Jon's parentage.
Yeah, like a possibility that, he's just not, your everyday bastard.
Right. And another thing I like in this chapter is that we talked about it a little earlier, is that they kind of bring Jon back to earth. Like, he's like, I'm better than all of them or whatever. And Donald Noy's like, not all of them are lords from some castle in the north or any castle. So Jon learns that his brothers of the Night's Watch are basically rapers, thieves, murderers. They're not the sons of lords. These are basically criminals. The wall is basically like a life sentence jail, kinda, that's made out of ice.
Pretty much. And I felt like Jon was being a bit unfair. Of course, the rapers are terrible people, but for example, look at the thieves. Maybe they were stealing to feed their families. Like, there could be a context to it.
Yeah, see, he doesn't know. Like, he's so naive when it comes to what life is really like for other people, because although, yes, Jon is a bastard, he hasn't always been treated nice by Lady Catelyn. He hasn't always been included in things that he might want to be included in. But at the same time, you grew up in a castle. You had teachers and trainers, and you never had to want for a meal. You never had to find a bed to sleep in. Like, these people come from a very different life than you do. And Jon is kind of naive to that, because the world that Jon knows is inside the walls of Winterfell. Like, he's never, I'm sure he's been to a castle or two, but he's never been to a place like where he is now. And really, there's no place like where he is now in all of Westeros.
Mm-hmm. And like, that's an issue with, like we said before, like all the Starks, they see the world through these rose-tinted glasses. Like, there's people starving, right outside your castle, probably.
Yeah. And I will say, like, to me, if Jon did stay at Castle Black and never like ventured beyond the wall. Jon venturing beyond the wall and spending time with the wildlings, I feel like really bettered him. Not just like bettered him because he got like some type of survival skills or something, but bettered him as a person because he now sees like the struggles of the common people, even wildlings. Like you see how they live, you experience their culture, and it's kind of similar when you think about Daenerys.
I was just about to say that. It's kind of like a reflection of the two.
Yes, with the Dothraki and her intermingling, joining the culture, not like fighting against it like Viserys. Like it speaks so much to their characters. And Jon and Daenerys have a lot of parallels. And Bran also parallels with them too as well. But if we got into that, we'd be 2 hours.
We'd be here all night.
Yes, we'd be here all night. I won't hold you up all night. But so I want to real quickly talk about the wall itself. Just a random question. What is your favorite theory about the wall? Like who built it, what it's made? Like what's your favorite one?
My favorite theory is pretty much that everyone came together, the giants, the first men, pretty much everyone after the long night, they came together, and it was like a great work of magic that they created together.
I mean, I kind of agree with that. Like, that's one of my favorites. I also like the thoughts of the children of the forest just like swirling that snow up together and packing that wall. I definitely think that it's magical, but it kind of does seem like it was more than magic, and probably the giants and the first men played a part in it because of like the black gate at the night fort that definitely gives off like more vibes than just magic itself.
Yeah.
But
I also wonder if, like, besides, in some like fire, magic's not like this completely happy thing all the time. I wonder if there were any human sacrifice going on.
I bet there were. Like, I bet there were human sacrifices because in the world book, like it says, when the children broke the arm of Dorne, which was a big act of magic, which I would think breaking the arm of Dorne would be similar to building the wall. Like that kind of magic would be similar because it's so big. It's such a massive wall. It said there that they sacrificed, rumor is that they sacrificed 1,000 captives or 1,000 of their own young, like their own kids. They were that desperate.
That's quite telling about the situation they were in. When you're ready to sacrifice your own people,
right?
Especially children.
And they don't even have that many. Like they were a dying race.
Yeah, like, so their numbers were already dwindling, and like that's a tough choice. Your numbers are already bad, and you're like, all right, we're going to sacrifice our children, which is our future,
right,
for the future of the whole race.
Exactly.
And
like
we see where that ended.
Exactly. And
men were shady for that. And then the Andals.
Oh, the first men are super shady. Like, I don't understand. The first men, they came there, like, to me, they're like a Viking kind of, like that's who I relate them to, like the Vikings of real world history. And like, they just came there with their horses and just raided and cut trees down and just did whatever. And then the Andals were even worse than the first men, but we don't really know what really happened with the first men because the history is so like
hidden in shadow.
Yeah. And with the Andals, we don't really know what's true because the victors always write their self in a good light. So we don't know exactly what happened, but yeah, they were petty as hell for that, shady. And I don't know why the children ever forgave them.
I think they forgave them. I always saw it as a, kind of like a Native American kind of thing. Like, they outnumber us. They have these weapons. We can't fight them. They'll kill us. So it's kind of like, let's work with them out of, no choice.
Yeah, And that sounds accurate. I mean,
'Cause,
because
it's
what
like,
would they do? Because they were basically too powerful. They didn't have enough. They were so outnumbered.
pretty much like the old saying goes, if you can't beat them, join them.
And that's why I really believe that the children of the forest, I know like in the show, it said the children of the forest made the White Walkers. And it's never, we don't know in the books, but I really think that came from George. Because if you look at how White Walkers are made, White Walkers are made from the dead of the people that the children were fighting. So that automatically boosts the children's numbers.
That's true. But it's also, I feel like the others themselves are something different, like a bit separate from the children of the forest.
Like they are like a weapon that they lost control of?
Honestly, I always saw them as a different race.
Or
Because
like a
there's a
completely different entity, like they don't have anything to do with each other.
Yeah, like for example, like the others, they're kind of like, this inhuman race. I always saw them as being their own thing, but the whites that are kind of basically reanimated corpses.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's a magic that's kind of similar in every so-called religion in A Song of Ice and Fire. Like, for example, now we have fire whites.
Mm-hmm. And all the magic seems to come from one source, right? Like,
yeah, I feel like there's no gods. Like, it's just like everyone thinks there's gods, but they're just using magic themselves.
right. That's true. Like, I agree with that. I don't think any of the gods are real. I think it's all magic. It's all smoke and mirrors. And it's all like a manipulation tactic for, I don't want to say it's a manipulation tactic for the powers that be, like in Westeros, because I do believe that to a certain extent, like some people really believe in the faith of the seven. Some people really believe in the old gods. But far as we know from what we've been presented, the old gods aren't real. The first men were praying to the weirwoods, and the green seers were seeing those prayers through the trees and trying to help.
Yeah, and I also, the reason they probably cut them, because we know green seers just weren't humans. There were green seers amongst the children of the forest as well.
Right.
And it makes me wonder if the first men that were green seers, I wonder if there were, some intermingling, forced or not, amongst with the children of the forest.
100%. I definitely agree. Like, I definitely think that is the case, because in the World of Ice and Fire, we get that story about the Warg King, which we don't really know like who he is, where he's from, but we know he's a warg, and we know that the Stark in Winterfell kidnapped his daughters. And that's likely how the Green Seer, Children of the Forest blood got mingled with the blood of the Starks.
Mm-hmm. It's actually really interesting when you look at it. The Starks kind of have a dark history.
Oh, super dark. Super dark. Everybody
Like,
loves to talk about House Targaryen this, House Targaryen that, but the Starks' history is dark as shit.
like they're one of the darkest families in Westeros.
Yes, like they were sacrificing people to the weirwoods. The Night's King is believed to have been a Stark. And he was
Stark
like
bastard.
yeah, Stark bastard. So like, and then like, you have Theon Stark that like went over to Andalos and put all those heads on spikes along the coast. Like they've done some shit.
Yeah, and like people, like you said, they love to demonize the Targaryen, but pretty much any noble family, they're not saints. How do you think they got where they stand?
Right. It's just because the Targaryens have dragons. So they take that as, oh, it's too overpowered. Like they have these dragons. But like if any of these houses had these dragons, they would do the same thing, because a lot of times that's just the nature of man. And there's
exactly,
Go
Like
ahead.
they complain about the Targaryens having dragons, but how do you think the children of the forest felt when you guys ran through them with your huge numbers, weapons they probably never seen before?
Right. They had leaves and twigs and shit, and here they come with bronze weapons and iron
Right?
weapons,
Like so for
outnumbering
them,
them like 5-1.
but you guys were dragons to them.
Right, exactly. Amazing analogy. I love that. But yeah, that's basically, in a nutshell, what it is.
Ooh, can we talk about that little vision or imagination John had of
A
Benjen?
Benjen, yes. Let me get the quote. Jon had remembered the things that Tyrion Lannister told him on the King's Road, and in his mind's eye, he saw Ben Stark lying dead, his blood red on the snow. The thought made him sick. What was he becoming? Afterward, he sought out Ghost in the loneliness of his cell and buried his face in his thick white fur. So, and you said he mentions that again, right?
Yeah, he mentions it again when he talks to Tyrion later on in the chapter. Like he sees Benjen lying dead in the snow in his own blood.
Yeah, I definitely think that's foreshadowing. It has to be, because we know that Benjen never comes back. Now, there are a lot of, we don't know exactly where he is or if he's dead, if he's alive. I really think that Benjen is cold hands. I know George R. R. Martin supposedly answered that question for someone and said, no, he wasn't cold hands. But in the show, he was like an undead Benjen. And we know the people he left with are dead.
Yeah, we know for a fact they're dead.
Right. And it's funny because it's like, does Jon have some kind of green sight? Is that some kind of like thing sent to him via Blood Raven or something? Because it's so on the nose.
I wouldn't be surprised as it is. Honestly, I feel like Jon, magic-wise, he's probably the second most powerful in the Stark family after Bran.
Yeah, he is. I think it probably has to do a mix with, like, he has the Stark blood, but he also has the blood of the dragon as well. So he has a very powerful ancestry. And I also think he also has the blood of, like, his grandmother was a Dane. So he has House Dane blood, and I think he has House Blackwood blood too. So he has like the blood of all of these magical houses, like Dane, Blackwood, Targaryen, and Stark.
Like he's the perfect magical mix.
Yes, perfect magical man.
But you know something that kind of scares me? Because that also sets him up to be the perfect sacrifice.
It really does. Which is, I've been thinking about, like, how does this thing end, right? So what I like to think about is with Jon, like with Jon's resurrection, will Jon be like Beric? Will Jon be like Lady Stoneheart? Will he be something in between? Or will he be something completely different because of his magical bloodline? And then if he dies and comes back, is he sacrificed again?
I wouldn't be surprised if in the story, since we do know, he has, the typical tropey fairy tale story in a sense. I wouldn't be surprised if he sacrificed his life, like the hero in the story, and saves everyone.
Oh, I would love it. I would love it if he sacrificed his life, as long as he doesn't kill Daenerys.
Yes, because I don't want to see that.
That was some bullshit. We don't want to relive it, George.
If I get that in the book, I'm throwing that book out the window.
Yes, me too. All of it. All the books, all the posters, everything got to go.
Oh, yeah. Since we're talking about Benjen, I saw a theory, and I was like, I don't see it happening, but I always wondered, what if Benjen has, some bastards out there beyond the wall?
I would love it. Because the Starks, like we were saying, they're so like above everybody, they're so on this pedestal. I would love for them to have bastards. I would love for Benjen, good old Benjen Stark, to have a couple bastards beyond the wall. It's something we probably never know. Like, I'm pretty sure Brandon Stark has a couple bastards in Westeros.
Probably right outside of Winterfell in the village.
He's worse than Robert. He probably has like kids in every kingdom.
That's so funny. I've always wondered how Robert and Brandon would have gotten along if he was sent to the Eyrie.
Right. They'd have been the best of pals. They'd have had all kinds of STDs and everything. They'd have been like King Henry VIII.
It's a good thing Brandon wasn't sitting there, because that would have been a hot mess. We already know they're both hot-headed. Who knows what they would have did? That would have
been, oh my God. I struggle imagining Brandon Stark with Catelyn Stark. I don't know.
It would be so miserable.
I just feel like it would be a Cersei Robert relationship.
Right? I feel like she would turn to Cersei.
Yeah, 100%. She'd be a killing bastards type of lady.
Right? Because, like, you see how she treated Jon, and that was just one. And he was born before Ned had even met. Like, they were even together.
Oh, I know.
So, like, could you imagine if, like, someone was having kids on her
left and right
several years later?
Left and right, and by high ladies, because it would have been like pretty young virgins, because that's what he liked.
Well, didn't he? Nothing is beautiful as a bloody sword.
Yes, nasty. So
He must have been a charmer, though, because he had Lady Dustin thinking he was about to marry her.
Yes, I was reading a Lady Dustin chapter, or a Theon chapter, the other day, and Lady Dustin was carrying on about Ned's bones. And I'm just like, girl, that man has been dead for 16 years. Let it go. Let it go.
I swear, she's Petty LaBelle.
She is. She's all over it. She's like, that must have been some good stuff, because he's been gone. He is dead. It's like, you can't bring him back from dead, and you're still pressed over him? Jeez.
Exactly. I guess Rouge wasn't lying when he said she knows how to nurse a grievance.
Oh, yes, she does. She's nursed that one for 16 years.
Like, I couldn't imagine holding a grudge for 6 months.
Right. It's like, there's a quote about it. It's like you drinking the poison and hoping the other person dies. Like holding a grudge. But basically, it just does more harm to you than the other person.
Exactly. Like, move on with your life. You had a new husband. Like, come on now.
Yeah.
And like, even if you hated your husband, he died, and you pretty much had free reign of the castle.
Right. You're doing whatever you big enough to do, whatever you want to do. Like,
you know how many
bones.
women? Like, how many women in Westeros probably would kill for that?
Yes. Thousands of, all of them probably, because they are all in like arranged marriages and don't like their husbands.
Right? Like, she controls her money. She has control of her body. She doesn't have to sleep with anyone unless she wants to. Like, you got a pretty good life, all things considered.
She does what she wants, far as in, like, even with the Starks, like, when Robb goes to war, she sends like this token force. Like, she doesn't send all of her men. She doesn't send even half of her men. She's like, oh, I'm just going to send them enough so they can just not suspect me of hating them.
And that was always strange to me, because I understand if, you're kind of like, the second family, like, Roose Bolton, like the second most powerful, you have a chance of taking over. I see the point in being strategic, but when you're kind of, lower on the wrong, you should probably want to be loyal, because if they lose, it might not end well for you.
Right. And I mean, the Starks did lose, right? And then now Lady Dustin is all like in that Grand Northern Conspiracy with Wyman Manderley and all of those people where they hate the Boltons and want to pay the Boltons back for the Red Wedding. So like in the end, it didn't work out for her anyway.
Right? Just
She's
and she
not
was
the
being petty.
smartest. She's not the smartest crayon or smartest. She's not the brightest light bulb. Definitely not the smartest.
That's an issue a lot of character has in the song Ice and Fire. Everyone thinks there's this political genius.
Yes.
And reality, they're just messing up. Like they're doing the dumbest thing.
And they expect other people to be playing by their rules. And there really are no rules. Like that's the first rule of Game of Thrones. There are none. None of these people are following rules.
Right? Like that's Ned's problem. He thinks everyone's going to act with honor. And like, that's not going to happen. These people are in it to win it.
Yeah, they are. And you know, one thing I really like about this chapter is that Tyrion and Jon, a lot of Jon's chapters and Tyrion's chapters so far have been showing like this relationship that's being built. And when you think about Jon, like Jon isn't the smartest light bulb, or he's not the brightest light bulb either. But Tyrion is, though. Like Tyrion, out of all of the characters in the books, Tyrion has this political mind. He understands the Game of Thrones. And I really like his chapters because you get a understanding of the actual game that's being played. And that's another reason, like, season 8 of Game of Thrones, like, why did they make Tyrion so stupid? Because that's not Tyrion. Like, Tyrion is not an idiot. Tyrion advised Daenerys to do some of the things that Tyrion advised Daenerys to do.
I felt like they had to make, I'm not making excuses for them, but they had to make him dumb because otherwise they would have just ran over everyone, which they should have.
That's true.
But I guess they were like, oh, we need to drag out the story, but
you know,
and
see,
they all
and that's the problem with like leaving the other Aegon out, Phaegon, because when Daenerys arrives to Westeros, she's not just gonna be opposing Cersei. Like she's gonna there's like Euron, and Euron is way more of the Backstreet Boy pirate of Game of Thrones. Like Euron is dangerous. He is magical, and he's the most dangerous player on the board that Daenerys is going to face.
Euron scares me.
He scares me.
Like, there's something really twisted about him. Any man that would rape his brothers, both of them, several times, there's something wrong with him.
And kill them.
Yeah, and he killed them. Like, who does that?
Your brothers, like that. He is terribly scary. And then like in that chapter of The Winds of Winter where like he got with that girl, he got her pregnant, and then he cut off her tongue and tied her to the mast of his ship.
Yeah, like I feel like he has no boundaries and like no remorse. Like he was, for example, like going back to his brothers, I feel like he was mocking them. Like he was like, oh, I always wondered, were you praying I'd choose you? And I was like, wow.
Or praying I'd pass you by. Like, what the fuck? He's so sick and twisted. Book Euron is like villain. Straight
the devil.
Villain. Yeah, straight the devil. But that's what I'm saying. Like, when Daenerys comes to Westeros, she's going to have to deal with Euron. She's going to have to deal with Cersei. She's going to have to deal with Phaegon. She's going to have to deal with whatever's going on in the north. So it's not going to be a thing where they're going to have to dumb people down in order to make it interesting.
Pretty much. It's going to be like everyone's jumping her.
Yeah. That's basically what it's going to be. She's going to be in one thing after another. And
because she won't know who's friend and who's foe.
Exactly.
She's a queen. She's beautiful. She has power. Like, Phaegon and Euron are both going to want her.
Yeah. And I think Jon Snow is going to also be a factor, too.
hmm I hate to like bring up the show, but I do feel like they are a match perfect for each
Yeah,
other.
their stories parallel so much.
And like they have like the same kind of values in a sense. Like they each want like a just. They see the world. How I see it is when they meet, they know the world isn't perfect, but they want the world to be just, and they each they'll have the power to try and make that change.
Yeah, I mean, I totally see that. I wonder like how dark Jon is going to be upon resurrection, but I definitely think that the Jon Snow that we have that sees the injustice in the world, and the Daenerys that sees the injustice in the world and wants to work with, like, Jon wants to save people and Daenerys wants to save people. A lot of their core values are the same. And sure, they have like different things that they value, but at their core, like the empathy that they both have for less fortunate people, Daenerys has always kind of had it, but Jon forms it.
Yeah, after living with the wildlings and
Yes.
seeing how they live, because the wildlings have an unfair hand in life.
Oh, totally. The wall went up and they were on the wrong side of it. That's
It's really
what happened.
crazy because there's plenty of space in the north for them.
Yes. Plenty. The North is so big and not populated at all.
In the show, like in the books though, because the Northerners and the wildlings, they do have a lot in common.
Yeah, they do. They're like the same. They're first men, like they say it. I'm the blood of the first men, just like you. Like they had, and they worship the same gods. They with the children of the forest. They're said to trade with the children of the forest. They're very in touch with who they are, and that's the same thing with the Starks. So it's just, to me, it's just ignorance. It's just ignorance, and like the years have gone by. I mean, I'm sure the wildlings probably don't want to be in the North, to be honest, because I wouldn't. Like, if you're living free
Mm-hmm.
and you don't have to worry about paying taxes or following these laws that these men have laid down for you, then I would totally choose to be a wildling.
I agree. Like, honestly, I feel like overall, like in happiness, the wildlings before, obviously before
The
their
White
issues,
Walkers, yeah.
they were happier than majority of the servants and peasants,
Right.
and probably even noblemen.
Right. They're not up there playing the Game of Thrones. They're living off the land, being free. Like Craster seems to be happy with his lifestyle and all his wives and incestuous daughter wives or whatever. He seems to be just fine. And he kind of rubs it in their face when they come to his house.
Mm-hmm.
But the chapter ends off with Jon going to talk to the Lord Commander Mormont, and we get introduced to the prophetic Raven, Lord Mormont's Raven, totally a prophetic character, dropping hints and clues and dimes on everybody in the story. But Jon finds out that Bran is going to live, but that he is crippled. And I like that after Jon has had this like terrible start, that at the end of his chapter, he gets some good news. And even though it's bad news, he doesn't even care because his brother's going to live.
Exactly. I feel like anyone that loves their family would react the same, like, yeah, it's some drawbacks, but hey, you get to live.
Right. So the crow says, live, live. And we know that, well, we don't know. I suspect that Blood Raven is in that crow a lot of times. And some crow, I believe it was Blood Raven, had just told Bran, fly or die. And I'm sorry, this dog. And Bran was like, live, and the crow going, live, 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 definitely seems to me as some foreshadowing that crow and the same crow that was messing with Bran in his coma dream are connected.
Yeah, I agree. It all like speaking of that, like outside of the context, just reading that part, it's funny because sometimes a song that's on fire, you don't think of any magic, and reading this chapter, at first John's chapter doesn't have any magic, and I was just like, is this Crow talking?
Yes. And is John getting visions of the future?
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm back in the fantasy world now.
Yes. I'm telling you, like the fantasy, I love that. I can't say it enough. I love that about A Song of Ice and Fire, that it is a realistic story that has fantasy popping its head in every now and then.
Yeah, like, and it just catches off guard, and it makes it. I feel like that makes it even better because it's just not in your face all the time.
Yeah.
It makes magic feel more special to me.
Yeah. And it's like you experience the magic, right? Like, you know how sometimes you can read a story or watch a movie and you just are like thrust into this magical world that's already been built around magic. This world is different than that. You're thrust into a world that's different, and then you see this magic come to life. It's like an experience.
Yeah, it's kind of like your ghost watching everything in front of you. Like
Yes.
you're there and as a ghost.
Yes. But my overall thoughts on this chapter, it's not a very long chapter. I would say it's just that Jon is entering a hard life, and he's been lied to. The person that he's probably been taught not to trust, like I'm sure Ned Stark has grumbled all around the house about Lannisters not being good people. That is the person that actually gave him the hard truth. And I think we know Jon later really appreciates that. And that friendship is being built chapter after chapter after chapter. And that definitely means that it's going to come back around. That friendship is going to come back around.
I do agree that it's going to come back around. But I can't help but wonder, will it be positive? Because they're going to be completely different people.
Yes.
When they meet.
That I wonder the same thing, like how will it be? Because we know that Jon's dead and he died in the last book. So we have this cliffhanger where we don't know what Jon is going to be like. But we know that George R.R. Martin has said that Beric and Lady Stoneheart are foreshadowing for Jon. And we also know that any character that's died and been brought back doesn't have a POV chapter. Like Beric doesn't have a POV chapter, and Catelyn hasn't had a POV chapter as Lady Stoneheart. So will we even get inside Jon's head? And one of the things that Beric does is he loses his memories. Like he can't remember who his wife is, can't remember what she looks like, things like that. So I wonder like how much of what happened in a Game of Thrones Jon 3 or what happened in Jon 2 and all of the interaction that Jon has with Tyrion, I wonder how much of that he's going to actually retain.
I actually think he's going to have a good grasp compared to Beric, because Beric has been killed more times than Jon has. And like even using Lady Stoneheart, like she's not exactly what we call sane, but she has an idea what's going on.
Yeah, she remembers what happened. She's hell bent on killing the Freys and the Lannisters, anybody that had anything to do with the Red Wedding. So
yeah,
I definitely,
and I don't think she's crazy, honestly. Like Lady Stoneheart, like that, she's being kind of reasonable when you think about it. Like,
oh yeah,
somebody kills your family, of course you're gonna come back and be savage.
100%. I would love to see her link up with Jon. I would love to see them two reunited and what kind of conversation an undead Jon and an undead Catelyn would have.
That would be, I see it as being Catelyn would be either super salty and be like, of course the bastard gets to live, or she would have a slight change of heart and be mildly happy to see someone that's, from a friendlier time
Right. I wonder how that would go down because we know she ain't never liked him before. But yeah, this was our first introduction to Lord Mormont. Seems like a good guy. And Donnell Noyle. Why is his name such a tongue twister? Donnell Noyle. Noy.
Such a weird name.
And Donald Noy, we didn't talk about him too much, but he's actually from Storm's End. He knows all about Stannis, knows all about Robert, knows all about Renly. And I mean, that isn't really much to talk about on that, like, unless we want to be like picky. But
yeah, I definitely think he's an interesting character, though.
He is. He's a very
like
interesting character.
Like he's lived an interesting life.
Yeah, he has. And like the stuff that he helps Jon with, like he gives Jon real knowledge. And it's crazy because the people that have looked out for Jon the most are people that aren't from his house. They aren't his uncle. They aren't his dad. They're just his brothers in black. And that's a hard concept that Jon is going to have to come, like you're saying, Jon still misses his real brothers, but he doesn't. These are his real brothers now. And that's,
these are your brothers.
Right.
They're your brothers for now.
That's
you
the
might
concept.
never see your brothers again.
Right. That's the concept he has to get his mind around. And I think Jon having Ghost there with him is definitely helpful because that's a piece of home.
There's this quote that I couldn't help but chuckle at because I was just like, Jon is so dramatic. It goes pretty much like Donald Noah is like, I've watched you in the field. You're a bastard and a bully. And then Jon is like, it's so unjust. It took his breath away. And I was just like, really?
That is dramatic. It's so unjust.
I was like, so unjust. I was like, Jon, all right, you being dramatic now. Come on.
Yes, 100%.
Person would probably react like that if someone was calling them out.
Yeah, and it also goes to show how sheltered he really is, that he thinks that is unjust. Out of all the things he's seen, like you just saw your father cut a man's head off, that the man looks half insane. He cut his head off, and you didn't find any injustice in that.
Right, but some name calling is unjust.
Yes, he's Ad.
Oh yes, I actually wanted to bring up this quote. It's about the wall, actually. It's about Jon's, pretty much his perspective on the wall. He says, it was older than the Seven Kingdoms, and when he stood beneath it and looked up, it made Jon dizzy. He could feel the great weight of all the ice pressing down on him, and as if it were about to topple. And somehow Jon knew that if it fell, the world fell with it.
I just got the chills. That is totally foreshadowing that the White Walkers are going to bring down the wall. I had thought they're going to bring it down.
I agree. I think it's going to be brought down in the final war.
But I don't think it's going to be brought down with a dead dragon reanimated. I can tell you that.
Yeah. I feel like that was just so unimaginative.
Yeah. No, I think it's going to be brought down with some kind of horn or some kind of magic, some kind of something. But the wall is very important to Westeros, even though Westeros has forgotten
what it means.
Threat. Yeah, the threat. They're basically like, oh, these stories aren't real.
Yeah, and it even shows in this chapter how everyone has forgotten how important it is. Because I believe it says it holds no defenses to the South because none of that is important.
Right. And that's one of the overall themes of the story, right? Is that these lords are all fighting these wars that don't really matter. The war the war that really matters is in the North.
Like, okay, you're king, but what happens when the real threat comes and kill you and we're all dead?
Right. I mean, that's basically the Night's Watches keep warning the South, we need money, we need supplies, we need more men, and they're just ignoring it. All of it's going on deaf ears because they want to fight these endless wars of the Game of Thrones when, like you said, when the long night comes, it doesn't matter who sits on the Iron Throne. But it would be good if it's Daenerys.
As is just, if anything in the world is just, our great queen.
Yes, but
Who's
I want
not gonna go crazy and kill everybody.
No, totally not. But I want to thank you for coming on. Let the people know where they can find you one more time, and I'll definitely leave the links in the description.
Perfect. All right, guys, you can find me on Twitter at rentware. That's just ordinary rent and then where.
All right, and I wanted to thank you guys for listening, and I will see you next week. All
Bye,
right.
guys.